Hey guys, this is Catfish here again, and welcome back to my channel. In the Metro Royale game mode, weapons come in different levels, with the most expensive level called Refined Status being the most powerful. Refined weapons are prized because they deal 30% extra damage compared to their classic counterparts and thus are extremely lethal in combat. However, besides refined weapons, there are two other types of weapons that are rumored to be even more powerful: Steel Front and One-Eyed Cobra weapons. While normal pink refined weapons can be bought at any time in the black market, Steel Front and One-Eyed Cobra weapons can only be acquired through luck in the mystery shop, by gambling through draw packs, by killing bosses on the third map, or killing enemy players on the third map. These Steel Front and One-Eyed Cobra weapons were revered and treasured even more so than normal pink refined weapons because of the widespread belief that because they are rarer and because they are more expensive, they must be better in every way. Today, I'm going to debunk this myth and show you through science why Steel Front and One-Eyed Cobra weapons are not better than normal pink refined weapons and thus are a complete waste of money and a total scam. Let's get started. The first thing I want to direct your attention to is the ambiguous description of the weapons. As you can see, for a normal pink refined weapon, it clearly states that it deals 30% more damage. Pretty straightforward, right? However, if you look at the Steel Front or One-Eyed Cobra weapons, the description says that this firearm has been customized for Steel Front or One-Eyed Cobra members to increase damage by 15% along with other perks such as reload buff, scope in buff, recoil buff, things like that. But what does that mean exactly? Does that mean that it just deals 15 more damage than normal pink refined weapons? Or is it just 15% more than classic weapons, aka intact weapons? Also, since these weapons are customized for Steel Front and One-Eyed Cobra members, do we as players need to be in full Steel Front or One-Eyed Cobra gear to use these weapons? You will also notice that in this example of the M762, the Steel Front and One-Eyed Cobra versions actually cost more than the normal pink refined version. And despite the Steel Front M762 claiming that the durability is enhanced, the durability numbers directly below kinda contradict that very statement. Very interesting, Tencent. So let's start with the recoil. How do we determine if Steel Front and One-Eyed Cobra weapons have less recoil than normal pink refined weapons? On top of that, if we don't wear Steel Front armor or One-Eyed Cobra armor, do the perks of these weapons still exist? Now, in all previous recoil studies, a player would spray up a wall 5 times per gun and then draw lines to represent the recoil patterns of the gun. Depending on which spray pattern looks the nicest, we can then determine which gun is most accurate. This method was heavily popularized by Wacky Jackie on the PUBG PC version, and many famous PUBG Mobile YouTubers such as The Bushka and Zendex have used it extensively to analyze PUBG Mobile weapon recoils. However, this method is extremely misleading and inefficient. First of all, in order to collect data using this Wacky Jackie method, you will need to spray a gun 5 times, take screenshots of each spray, draw lines for each spray, and repeat the process for every gun that you're trying to test. On top of this, when you actually arrive at your data, it can hide important insights and can be interpreted differently by different people. As an example, when you look at these spray patterns, some of you will say that the angle grip is the most stable, while others will say the light grip. There is no objective truth to this, just personal preference. Besides this dependency on eyeballing and personal preference, this method also suffers from extreme undersampling, which can skew the data. Even if you shoot up a wall 5 times, that is only 5 sets of data. Even with 5 sprays, that is still not a perfect representation of how accurate a gun actually is. Think about it this way. When you flip a coin, there's either heads or tails, 2 possibilities. When you flip 2 coins, you have 4 possibilities, heads or tails on either of the 2 coins. When you flip 3 coins, that's 8 possibilities, 4 coins is 16 possibilities. Therefore, if we treat each bullet in a 30-round magazine as a single random event, one spray provides us with 30 random events, which means that even if a bullet can only travel in 2 possible ways, that means that there are only a total of 1 billion possible ways that 30 bullets can form just one line. Yeah, 1 billion possible ways. Therefore, some of you smarter viewers will instantly realize that Wacky Jackie's method of only spraying 5 times means that he is only showing us 5 sprays out of the possible 1 billion sprays, and this is just assuming that a bullet can only travel in 2 directions. Just to drive this point further, 5 sprays out of a possible billion sprays is literally saying that you are only seeing less than 0.0000005% of the complete data. I cannot stress how incomplete and misleading that is. In fact, if you wanted to see 100% of the data by shooting up a wall a billion times and drawing a billion lines, you would need to spend the next 159 years constantly spraying up a wall and then another 1,057 years to draw lines in order to form a complete picture of how accurate one gun is. Also, because you're only seeing less than 0.0000005% of the data, there is a tendency for people to look at these graphs, see a line going in a weird direction, and automatically assume that this gun must be inaccurate, even though it could have just been an outlier, and there are just simply not enough lines to show how accurate the gun actually is. So, clearly we cannot just shoot up a wall 5 times and then draw lines. So how can we find out how accurate the guns really are? Well, there are 2 problems we need to solve. First, there is interpretation. We cannot simply rely on people thinking that a gun is better by eyeballing 5 lines and relying on personal preference. We need actual numbers to clearly show that a gun is more accurate than another gun. And second, we need better sampling and data collection. We need a method that is so much faster to collect data and can show so much more of a complete picture. This brings me to the Catfish Contra Muffin Quantitative Recoil Analysis method, which I abbreviate as CRAM. This method, developed by my close friend Contra Muffin and me, completely revolutionizes the way recoil studies are performed and should be performed. This method involves spraying a gun at a wall just once, and then measuring horizontal and vertical distance in between each bullet. From that, we can then calculate the average horizontal and vertical recoil of the gun. Doing it this way allows us to treat each bullet as a single event, and therefore just one spray gives us 30 sets of data to work with, which is already 6 times more precise than the Wacky Jackie method. In fact, since we look at each bullet separately, the number of total possibilities is significantly lower. Going back to the coin flip example, why look at 30 coin flips when you can just look at a single coin? Because of this, my method is much easier to perform and is much faster in terms of data collection. Whereas the previous method requires shooting up a wall 5 times per gun and spending 45 minutes drawing lines to analyze the spray patterns, my method only requires me to shoot the wall once per gun and around 5 to 10 minutes to analyze the data. On top of that, my method puts actual numbers to the stability of the weapons, which means you don't have to eyeball the spray patterns and possibly be biased. So, to all the other YouTubers who are shooting up a wall and then drawing lines to see which grip or which gun has the best recoil, your method provides the PUBG Mobile community with nothing but heavily misleading and incomplete data, and I would highly recommend you to watch on and see how I do it and carry on this standard of recoil analysis. So, how do we apply CRAM to our current situation? We start off with a steel front M762 and shoot up a wall, and then repeat the step for the normal pink refined M762, and then once more the steel front M762 again, but this time without a steel front vest to see whether the perks still exist even if you're not wearing a steel front armor. We screenshot each spray and import the pictures into a computer, where we then analyze the bullet holes pixel by pixel. Using the coordinates at the bottom of the screen, we can write down the exact coordinates of each bullet hole. Then, by subtracting the initial value from the final value for both x and y coordinates, we can arrive at delta x and delta y, which are basically how much each bullet jumps in the horizontal direction and in the vertical direction after each shot. We can then take the average of these values to see the average horizontal and vertical recoil per bullet. On top of this, in order to calculate total horizontal recoil, we can then take the absolute value of this so that all values are positive. Graphing these absolute values debunks the myth that the longer you spray, the more inaccurate the weapon is in terms of horizontal recoil, because as you can see, the gun does not become more inaccurate the longer you spray. Anyways, as you can see, the average delta X for the steel front M762 is around 0.276, which means that every single bullet has a natural tendency to jerk to the right by 0.276 pixels. This number is not horizontal recoil, but just proves that a gun does not drift left nor right when you hold down the fire button. Instead, it just goes straight up. On the other hand, if you look at the average delta Y, you can see that on average, each bullet jumps up by around 22.21 pixels. This number is very important because it is known as vertical recoil. Okay, so now that we know vertical recoil in terms of pixels, how do we calculate the stability of the gun in the horizontal direction, aka horizontal recoil? Before we get to that, we take the standard deviation of these two values, which results us in 4.35 and 3.47. But what do these two standard deviation values even mean? Standard deviation is basically a measure of how much something spreads. According to a law in statistics called the 65, 95, 99.7 rule, it is defined that around 95% of all shots will land within 2 times the standard deviation number. In this case, that means that though each bullet on average jumps 22.21 pixels, because the standard deviation delta Y is 3.47 times 2 is 6.94, which means that most bullets will jump vertically anywhere between 22.21 pixels plus or minus 6.94 pixels. Likewise, the standard deviation of delta X means that 95% of bullets will jump either to the left or right by 2 times this number, which is 8.7 pixels to the left or 8.7 pixels to the right. This value here at the bottom left, the one I call standard deviation of delta X, is the most important of all because it is known as horizontal recoil. This number literally means that most bullets fired by this gun will jerk to the left or right by up to 8.7 pixels. Simply put, the higher this number is, the more unstable the gun will feel and thus less precise. One more thing I want to add is a little disclaimer. If you look at this histogram at the bottom, this is a uniform distribution. This means that while the standard deviation calculations are pretty accurate, it's not the best measurement of spread. There are better calculations, such as interquartile range, that can be even better at capturing how accurate a gun actually is. For the rest of this video, the only 2 numbers you should care about is this one on the top right and this value at the bottom left, because they are literally vertical and horizontal recoil numbers. If we repeat the same process for the normal pink refined M762, we can see that the average delta Y, or vertical recoil, is 26.62, which is significantly higher than the steel front M762. Also, the standard deviation delta X is 5.36, which means that 95% of all bullets have a maximum tendency to jerk to the left or right by up to 2 times 5.36 pixels. Because both the vertical and horizontal recoil are greater for the normal pink refined M762, it shows us that the steel front indeed does reduce recoil to a certain extent. Now, to prove that you don't need to wear steel front armor to use steel front weapons, we repeat the same steps for the steel front M762 without a steel front vest. As you can see, both the vertical and horizontal recoil values are nearly identical, which means you don't need to wear steel front armor to use steel front weapons. Just for fun, I found out that the classic M762 has a vertical recoil of 33.86 pixels and a much worse horizontal recoil of up to 7.20 pixels on average, which quite literally means that the pink refined compensator and pink refined angle foregrip in Metro actually does provide much better recoil reduction compared to the normal classic compensator and classic angled foregrip. Alright, so now that we've determined that the steel front M762 actually does have better stability than the normal pink refined M762 as promised in the weapon description, what about damage? People have long asked, does the 15% extra damage means that it is 15% on top of the 30% extra damage that normal pink refined weapons have? Or are steel front and one-eye Cobra weapons simply just on par with purple improved weapons in terms of damage? No, that can't be. Steel front and one-eye Cobras are so rare and so expensive, so they must deal more damage than the normal pink refined weapons, right? Well, no. I hate to break it to everyone, but steel front and one-eye Cobra weapons actually do deal only 15% extra damage compared to classic intact weapons. Which means that while they could be more accurate, they are certainly weaker than the normal pink refined weapons. But how did I know this for sure? I went to Fort Rosshawk with a steel front M762 and a normal pink refined M762. I attached the same attachment on both weapons, loaded purple high explosive 7.62mm rounds on both guns, and only shot at the head of the Fort Rosshawk boss using both weapons starting from the steel front M762. You guys can talk now, however...
Alright, let me guess, less damage.
Yeah, you're right. Like, a lot less.
Haha, I was right, you was wrong.
Wait, so steel front does more damage or?
No, steel
No,
front does
steel front does
less
less.
damage than normal.
Because as I said before, my perfect
You know why?
explanations.
I think I know why.
Wait, does the
Because-
helmet disappear? Does the helmet disappear?
Wait.
The boss.
Wait, who shot that?
Yeah, if the more shots it takes, his armor tears.
Really?
No.
That shouldn't be an
Yeah,
issue, right?
it does.
Wait, but
Because when I watched a YouTuber, he was using AWM, and the first few shots were not that strong, and then
Oh yeah, I
his
know who you're
la-
talking about.
Yeah, because the first few shots it didn't do that much damage, and then like after the few shots, it started doing
Okay,
a lot of damage.
Notice that the boss's helmet shatters after around 15 shots to the head, which means every single headshot now does a lot more damage than before. This also means that for completeness sake, I had to run this experiment once more, except this time starting with the normal pink refined M762 so I can see how much damage it will do before the helmet breaks.
One try, yeah, one try.
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be that... Okay, I'm gonna have to analyze the data. It wasn't as clear as I thought it would be. Very interesting. Okay, let's go home. The rest of my night will just be analyzing this data.
Yeah, sure.
This entire process needed to be screen recorded at 1080p and 60 FPS because afterwards I need to take screenshots of the boss's HP after every single shot and then tediously count how many pixels the boss's HP bar gets reduced by after every single shot, which, as you can guess, means I only got 3 hours of sleep last night. Using MS Paint, I observed that when the boss's helmet was intact, every headshot from the steel front M762 shortened the HP bar by 5.91 pixels. However, once the helmet shattered, every headshot now shortens the HP bar by 22.7 pixels per headshot. However, looking at the normal pink refined M762, each headshot actually deals 6.57 pixels worth of damage, and after the helmet shatters, it deals 25.14 pixels worth of damage per headshot. Keep in mind, all shots were headshots, all attachments were exactly the same, and I only used purple high explosive ammo. Even before we do the math and expose the scam, those of you with common sense will already notice that the steel front M762 definitely does not deal more damage than the normal pink refined M762. However, for the sake of completion, let's actually calculate exactly how much damage less. Since we know for sure that the steel front M762 doesn't deal 15% more damage than the normal pink refined weapon, what if we interpret the weapon description the other way? What if it actually only deals 15% more damage compared to intact weapons, aka the same damage as purple improved weapons? Well, let's do some math. If it's true that my precious steel front M762 only deals 15% more damage than an intact M762, then we need to calculate the damage of the intact M762 by dividing the steel front M762 damage by 15%, or more specifically by 1.15. So let's do that. We divide 5.91 pixels, which is the headshot damage before the helmet breaks, by 1.15, and we get 5.14 pixels of damage. So we have just now calculated that if we fired using an intact M762 using purple high explosive rounds at the head of a boss, it will deal 5.14 pixels of damage. Now, the time has come to finally put an end to this whole scandal. If we multiply the intact M762's damage by 30%, or more specifically 1.3, we should arrive at a number very close to the normal pink refined M762's pixel damage. So let's see. 5.14 multiplied by 1.3 gives us 6.68, which is so incredibly close to the observed normal pink refined M762 damage of 6.57 that we now know for certain that normal pink refined weapons actually deal 30% more damage than intact weapons, but steel front and one-eye Cobra weapons deal only 15% more damage than intact weapons. This mind-blowing reveal also means that steel front and one-eye Cobra weapons are better than purple weapons due to the buffs in the weapon descriptions, such as better stability, better scope in speed, and so on, but are worse than normal pink refined weapons. So, what conclusion can we draw from this study? For one, despite being super ambiguous, Tencent was actually truthful from the start. It was we, the players, who confused ourselves due to the ambiguous wording of the weapon description, and mostly because of the rarity and expensiveness of the steel front and one-eye Cobra weapons. So, how should you feel about this scandal as a player? Well, if the steel front and one-eye Cobra weapons cost the same as normal pink refined weapons, then it's a matter of preference, right? If you want slightly more stable weapons with faster scope and speed, faster reload, higher headshot damage, go for the steel front and one-eye Cobra weapons, no problem. If you don't need those silly buffs and all you care about is more power and you want the truly fastest killing weapons, go for the normal pink refined weapons as they deal significantly more damage than steel front and one-eye Cobra weapons and thus kill much faster. However, that is if the steel front and one-eye Cobra weapons costed the exact same as the normal pink refined weapons. Keep in mind, steel front and one-eye Cobra weapons do not cost the same as normal pink refined weapons and are also much harder to acquire. With that in mind, I highly recommend you that if you don't have one already, it's okay, forget about it, it's not worth it. However, if you already have one, then it boils down to what you like, accuracy or power. Well, that was a mouthful. I really hope you guys learned a few things about quantitative statistical analysis and why science is so important to us. Not only in PUBG, but science allows us to search for and discover the truth of the world around us. Anyways, that's all I had in this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up, and if you hated it, please let me know what part confused you the most so I can do a better job explaining it in my next video. With all that said, I'm Catfish, your PUBG Mobile scientist you can trust, and I'll see you guys next time.